Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
I remember being at a networking event years ago, pre-pandemic. It was one of those networking events where the room, everyone's standing around, a little too straight, holding their drink a little too carefully, trying to look like they belong. And there was this young guy who came in a suit, polished, clearly trying to make a strong impression. And he was walking over to introduce himself to a small group, and as he reached out his hand, clips his own coffee and spills, right? And not a little spill. It was kind of like a full front-on spill. Think for a moment a slow-motion movie disaster, right? Anyhow, I'm trying to paint a picture here. Now the room sort of pauses, or at least people who were around him sort of paused. He probably felt like everybody in the room was looking at him, and time was standing still. He looks down, and he essentially, for him, I guess there's a fork in the road. What do? Do you apologize 10 times and shrink into the floor, or own it? And he paused, he looked up, he smiled and said, well, now you'll definitely remember me. And the room laughed, or at least the people who were around him. And they weren't laughing at him, they were laughing with him. And that just sort of broke the tension. Conversations opened up and people leaned in. The moment didn't hurt him, right? It didn't hurt him at all, even though in that moment he was a total klutz. And that's the reason it wasn't the spill that defined him, it was his reaction. And then, that thinking back to that, it reminds me of my own daughter who interned for me while she was in college. She was here most summers. And there's still a sign on the wall in the room that she occupied. It's kind of a studio. And the sign reads, "Days since last accident." And there's a 0 on there. Now it's a dry erase board, a small dry erase board, and we could clearly erase it, or could easily erase it, I should say. But we don't. We leave the 0 there because, she just owned the fact that she would spill coffee from time to time, and still does. And we kind of have this running joke where, we'll trip, we'll do something, and all we need to say is 0. That's all we need to say. We laugh. We know what it means. So at any rate, the point is that people aren't judging the mistakes we make nearly as much as they're judging our reaction to it. And that's really the game. It's not perfection, but recovery. I remember a time when I was in college, and I probably have shared this on the podcast at one point or another, living in a fraternity. The kitchen was down in the basement. People, go down and grab your food, go upstairs. And there was a guy walking ahead of me. I'll leave his name out of it. But he slipped, and his back foot kicked up, and it kicked my plate in the air, and the plate landed upside down in my hand. Of course, you'd imagine food just kind of drizzling through my fingers and that. And he turned and he looked at me, and rather than owning it, which it was a funny moment. I mean, what are the odds that plate flips over? What are the odds that somebody trips? On the stairs? I mean, this is a house of all, college football players. What's the odds that somebody trips, and then what's the odds that he hits my hand, and what are the odds that plate goes up in the air and flips, upside down on my hand? I don't know. It was just, for me, it was funny. For him, it was an embarrassing moment, and immediately it's like he was blaming, my knee gave out or something like that. I can't remember. And I was like, oh, come on. That was kind of my reaction. Come on. It's not a big deal. I'll go get another plate. We'll clean this up. It's not a big deal. But that stuck with me, the fact that he really couldn't laugh at himself. He couldn't, maybe it was his knee. It doesn't matter. It's still, can we laugh at the moment? And it's just he's just a little too serious about it. And I think we all have these moments. I mean, I know I do. I talk in front of lots of chapters of AmSpirit Business Connections 2, 3, 4, 5 times in a week. And I'm always making screw ups. I'll hand out, I usually have handouts, and I'll hand out flyers that I've copied and I've copied blank pages, right? I mean, I put it in the copier wrong, and I just have to own it. It's like it's my fault. And even if I had my assistant do it, um, I could have checked the work, right? I mean, I'm the one who left the office, right? So I just kind of own it, and sometimes I'll joke about it and just say, well, I give myself, one good screw up a day, and that's it. So we all do these things, and we might replay that moment in our heads for hours or maybe even days, depends on what it was and who it was in front of. But in reality, the other person, they kind of move on from things. And that's what research shows, is that we tend to overestimate how harshly others judge us. It's like thinking you fumble the ball in front of the stadium when in reality, most people aren't even watching the game, right? They're not watching the play, and they totally miss out on what's happened. So here's where it gets practical, I guess. In these situations, and again, I think if we're honest, we all have these sorts of situations. I can't think of one offhand sitting here right now, probably because I have so many. Not that, oh, I can't think because I'm so perfect. No, I mean, I know there's little things. I know there's little things all the time. When I'm cooking, I've got cooking mishaps. Just all sorts of stuff. So nothing's coming to mind, but they're there. Trust me, they're there. But there are two common responses. One is being embarrassed and blushing, and that sort of signals that you violated a norm. And the upside to that is it shows humility and respect. The downside is that it's often feels like an overreaction, as the research shows, is that we tend to judge ourselves in these moments more harshly than other people might judge us. I think a lot of people looking on for, in these situations, the guy who spilled the coffee, my daughter who spills stuff, there are other people around who are doing the same thing, and they're not judging. They're probably saying, oh, geez, that could be me, right? That could be me. The guy who slipped in front of me or his knee went out in front of me. Yeah, that could be me. I trip going upstairs all the time. It could be me. And so I don't really overjudge. I try not to overjudge. But the second approach is laughter. Just kind of laughing it off, poking fun at yourself. And really what that signals is, okay, it's small, it shows confidence, warmth, authenticity. It tends to relax the people around the room. Kind of lighthearted poking fun at yourself is, and I know people who just, they don't like that. But in reality, what that does to our networks is it signals to our networks that we're human, that we're relatable. I misspeak. I'm relatable because other people misspeak. I used to edit my podcasts to take out every because I had lots of them, and I felt bad about it. And I did it for a while, and it took a lot of time. There's probably an in there somewhere. It took a lot of time to go ahead and get those things out, and I shared it with somebody, and they're like, that's just who you are. That's how you normally talk. So just be who you are. You don't need to curate this podcast or perfection. You're just sharing your thoughts with your human voice, and so don't worry about it. And, I was at peace with the fact that I say or have these other pauses or whatever it might be, because that's just who I am. And I'm just, if you could see me now, I'm flailing my arms because that's just talk with my hands. Think of this metaphor as it's sports. Sorry, people who don't like sports or who hate, I use all the sports metaphors. It's like in football, dropping a pass, somebody throwing you, dropping the pass, you really have two choices. One, you can go back and hang your head in the huddle, and everybody feels that disappointment. It kind of brings everybody down. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, the weight of this situation, I'm going to screw up. Do I need to feel that bad too? Or you can just kind of clap your hands and say, you know what, my bad, next one, let's go, right? And if you choose the second one, you instantly sort of fire people up. Hey, it's okay. We're all making mistakes. In other words, your reaction sets the emotional tone, and your network sees that. Let's bring this back to the networking world. Networking is not about perfection. It's really about approachability. We're building relationships, and we want to build relationships with people who are like us, and people want to build relationships with people who are like them. And when You demonstrate that, yeah, I make mistakes from time to time and it's funny. You're just more approachable and people want to hang with you. When you can laugh it off, you lower your defenses, you create a sense of shared humanity. And yeah, you become memorable. Sometimes in a funny way, right? That's okay, but you're memorable. And here's the twist. Those small mistakes become great stories later, right? That coffee spill. That's a referral story waiting to happen. You remember when we met, what happened? To be clear, this is not about laughing everything off. There's a difference between innocently spilling coffee and hurting someone. When the mistake is serious, you own it, you show remorse, you make it right. Remember this is key. Match your reaction to the weight of the moment, right? Match your reaction to the weight of the moment. That's just emotional intelligence, and that's really leadership, and that's building an authentic brand that attracts people to you. People who share their mistakes are more relatable, more trusted, and this is research. They're more human. For example, I once called someone the wrong name 3 times in one meeting. I mean, they didn't correct me, but shame on me. I should have known. But that becomes a story people laugh about, and tease the other person about. And so the mistake becomes really a connection point, not a liability. It's an asset. So let's go back to that young professional I shared about with the coffee stain, because here's what's easy to miss. That moment could have gone the other way. He could have shrunk. He could have disappeared. He could have spent the rest of the event trying to recover. But instead he leaned in. He didn't pretend it didn't happen. He didn't overreact. He just acknowledged the situation and moved forward with confidence. And that's really the lesson, isn't it? In networking, in business, and life, we're going to spill coffee. Ask my daughter. We're going to spill coffee. We're going to spill things. We're going to make mistakes. You're going to say the wrong thing. You're going to have moments that, say somebody's name, pronounce it incorrectly, just be dead wrong. You're going to have moments that don't go as planned. And those aren't the test. Perfection is not the test. The test is what you do next with it. Do you shrink or do you step forward? Do you tighten up or do you lighten up the moment? Because people aren't looking for perfect. They're not. They're looking for real. They're looking for themselves in you. They're looking for someone who can handle life as it comes, gracefully, confidently, authentically. So the next time you have that moment, and you will, I will, probably going to happen yet today, pause, smile, and remember, it's not the mistake that people remember. It's how you carried it.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connections. All rights reserved.